Hello there. Thanks for tuning in to your favorite news destination. You're watching In Your Interest with me, Kabir Naqvi. And on the first segment on IYI tonight, we look back at a moment in history. A moment in history that continues to define our present and dictate our future. For decades, the 1954 Panchsheel Agreement has been taught in our textbooks as a landmark of peaceful coexistence. But today, a significant intervention from the highest levels of India's military leadership is forcing us to ask, was it a master stroke of diplomacy or a fatal strategic error? General Anil Chauhan, the Chief of Defence Staff, has brought the focus back to a sensitive chapter of the Nehru era. He suggests that when the British left in 1947, India had the opportunity to define its own frontiers. At that time, we held the McMahon Line in the east and had established certain claims in Ladakh. Yet, in 1954, India officially recognized Tibet as a part of China. By signing the Panchsheel Agreement, New Delhi essentially gift-wrapped Tibet's sovereignty and handed it over to Beijing.
Nehru probably knew that we had something as a McMahon Line in the east, we had some kind of a claim in Ladakh area, but it was not here. So that's why he wanted to go in for a Panchsheel Agreement, probably. And for the Chinese also, it was because when they had kind of liberated, so-called liberated Tibet, they had moved into Lhasa, they had moved into Xinjiang. This particular area was extreme from both the ends, so they wanted a stability probably in this particular region. So this area assumed some kind of a priority. So independent India was keen to build good relationship with China. So once Tibet was occupied by China, so we gave up those privileges. We recognized China as for its permanent seat in United Nations, and this Himalayan buffer which was there between us and Tibet, that evaporated, and that would convert into a border.
Well, the logic at the time was that by recognizing China's claim over Tibet, India believed it had finally settled its northern borders. It was a trade-off aimed at long-term peace. But as the CDS points out, this decision did something irreversible. It removed the Himalayan buffer, the entire zone that had separated two giants for centuries. And suddenly, India and China were no longer distant neighbors. They were standing face to face along a thousands of kilometers long disputed boundary. History shows us that China never shared India's sense of settlement. Beijing had already refused to recognize the 1914 Simla Convention, arguing that Tibet never had the authority to sign treaties. When China took full control of Tibet in 1950, that buffer the CDS is talking about vanished. By the time the ink on the Panchsheel Pact was dry, the ambiguities in Ladakh and the middle sectors up north remained like ticking time bombs. Ambiguities that have led us directly to the tensions we see on the line of actual control today. An esteemed set of panelists with us on the broadcast, and the big questions that we'll try and decode tonight. Did Nehru underestimate the strategic value of a sovereign or autonomous Tibet as a protective layer against Chinese expansion? Could a different approach after independence have prevented or reduced the tensions we see along the line of actual control today? With us on the broadcast, Wing Commander Anu Acharya, spokesperson Congress Party, Major General Rajan Kochhar, defense and geopolitical expert, Professor Swaran Singh, School of International Studies, JNU. Many thanks for taking out the time, Professor. And Harsh Dahiya, political analyst, with us here on the broadcast. Harsh, let's get the snowball rolling here. The CDS today, he said, India assumed, and he used the word probably twice, India assumed Panchsheel had settled the borders. Now, the ruling dispensation of the day has argued that Nehru's Panchsheel approach was strategically flawed. We've heard it time and again. In today's geopolitical reality, sitting in 2026, with our relationship with China, what exactly would India have done differently in 1994, given the global context back then in the 1950s? How does the BJP now see this? Is it a strategic miscalculation that they've called out quite a few times? Because the Congress Party will come out and say that this was a diplomatic necessity back in 1954.
Kabir, today we should not be just speaking about the Panchsheel Agreement, but we should be discussing the complete foreign policy of the Nehruvian era. I'm not just talking about Nehruji, but like the leaders that followed him after that. The whole the Nehruvian era and the thought was based on that, like, India should follow a non-alignment movement and should not follow aggressive military stance, which was completely flawed. And that is not just seen in the China, mistake we made, but also with Pakistan. My ancestors fought in India-Pak War of 1947-48. One of them, Honorary Captain Fateh Singh Latha, was also awarded the Mahavir Chakra. But what was the result of that? By Panchsheel Agreement, we lost Tibet as the biggest buffer between India and China. And then with the internationalization of the Kashmir issue by Prime Minister Nehru at that time, we lost a large territory of Kashmir first to Pakistan, and then later it was handed over to some parts of it were handed over to China as well. And I keep speaking about the Monroe Doctrine of the United States of America time and again, and I've written blogs and articles on it. The Monroe Doctrine of the USA says that it will not allow foreign power intervention in the Western Hemisphere. And this doctrine is not new. This was given in 1823. And it was central to the American policy in the 19th and 20th century. And so it is not that Nehruji and his advisors were not aware about this particular doctrine of the United States. And the kind of dominance of United States that we see today, that is based on that Monroe Doctrine of 1823. Had we followed something similar, and we had a leader who was giving a similar foreign policy at that point of time, even before we gained independence. That was Subhash Chandra Bose. Had Subhash Chandra Bose ji, I'm not belittling Nehru ji at all. He was a first prime minister. We respect him, but his foreign policy was flawed. In 1947, the only good thing we inherited from the British Empire was the largest standing army of South Asia. We could have used that to have an intervention in the Tibetan issue. We could have not allowed China to annex Tibet at that point of time. And had we not internationalized the Kashmir issue with Pakistan and on the international front, then we possibly could have broken Pakistan into several pieces. And Pakistan wouldn't have turned into a foreign proxy where foreign powers are using Pakistan and its soil to destabilize India. There are so many attacks happening on us today because the reality of 1940.
But again, focusing on the Northern Command, what should have the Nehruvian foreign policy done differently back then?
See, Nehruvian foreign policy could have done nothing because Nehru ji was a fantastic person. I do not deny that. But his idea of not using military might and his Gandhian principles do not work in the real world. There is only one treaty that is respected in the world throughout history, and that is pure military might. And he refused to see that. Had Subhash Chandra Bose ji would have been our first prime minister, the reality of today's India and the reality of the 1947 India would have been totally different, drastically different. Possibly Tibet would have been an independent country. Pakistan wouldn't have existed in the current form. And a lot of people, especially from the Congress, would say, no, that was the need of the time. And Nehruvian principles hold, ground in today's world as well. I disagree with that. Even Indira ji disagreed with the Nehruvian principles of foreign policy. Her intervention in 1971 with the situation of Bangladesh, the liberation of Bangladesh, shows that his daughter herself didn't believe in the Nehruvian principles of foreign policy.
Okay. Wing Commander, how do you look at this? Congress party has defended the Panchsheel as a product of its own time. And what's your rebuttal to Mr. Daya here? In hindsight, were there warning signs that China, about the dragon that India underestimated?
Good evening to you and the panelists and the viewers. Let me begin by saying this clearly. When a serving chief of defense staff starts reinterpreting history without solid evidence, it raises serious questions. National security leadership should unite the country with facts, not distract with politically loaded hindsight. And that's what is happening. Anybody with a passing information also speaks about Pandit Nehru, who doesn't know at that time what was happening. And at a time when one controversy around a military memoir already was dominating the headlines, suddenly opening another historical debate does not look accidental, it looks deliberate. There is no single accepted historical proof that Pandit Nehru has given up Tibet just to please China. Though it sounds dramatic, but it ignores the reality, Kabir, that China had already occupied Tibet in 1950. Since China has already entered Tibet in 1950, India did not create that situation. So where the question arises, and presenting a voluntary surrender is an oversimplification of a very complex time. Now, while I say this, I also want to remind people how General Chauhan became the CDS. To appoint him as CDS, the order of seniority was compromised, and a lieutenant general who was junior to a serving army chief was made the chief of the defense staff. So it is his obligation when the nation wants to know about General Naravne, his book, and the realities and truth. At that time,
All right, Wing Commander, we understand where you're going with this, but let's stick to the controversy at hand. Let's talk about Tibet.
I just want to tell you that this BJP government has now consistently doing this, making one army officer or an Air Force officer standing to the other one, like to confront them, because General Anil Chauhan is the one who, once he was giving a interview to Reuters, at that time he said we have lost more than 2 and less than 6 aircrafts in Operation Sindoor. Subsequently, the same thing was told by Captain Shiv Kumar in Jakarta. But our Air Force chief was made to speak in the General Katre's memorial lecture. He said, we have shot 6 aircrafts on air. Now, doesn't this mean that you are confronting 3 services officers together? Like this should not happen. So here, just to avoid one controversy, they are trying to create another one, and that is why this debate is today all about.
Okay, Wing Commander, I'm going to give you a quick follow-up. There is a credible, point that's coming from the ruling dispensation. They say, if Panchsheel was about peaceful coexistence, why did the border issue remain ambiguously handled back then at that particular time? Was that strategic optimism? Was it calculated diplomacy? Was it the non-alignment and Asian solidarity that Pandit Nehru was looking at? Or was it defensive pragmatism? How does one categorize that and put it?
See, in India in 1950s was a young nation with limited military capability. Decisions were taken under global pressure, Cold War realities, and post-colonial transition. This all has to be taken into account. Now, there were BJP governments in between. Why they couldn't do anything? 1993, we have come to a consensus with China. Why it could not be implemented by this present dispensation? They could not do a thing. But today they are again trying to create a controversy, because the basic controversy should be revolved around General Naravne's book, but they are again making one general stand against the another, and another one is creating another controversy. So I think this is not the point here. It is just to change headlines. This government is trying this kind of tactics.
Okay, all right. Main thanks for your opening submissions. General Kochhar, let's talk about the strategic depth. Let's stick to Tibet. Let's stick to the Panchsheel Agreement. If Tibet was India's strategic buffer, the Himalayan buffer that CDS says got evaporated, was India realistically in a position back in 1954 to prevent China's consolidation there? How significant was this buffer essentially? And how do you read CDS's comments?
Thank you, Kabir. I think it's a very interesting discussion, and let me not party lines. I am not from the Congress or the BJP.
Yep.
What is important here to understand is that why are we debating this, first of all? Because can we get back Tibet now? And have we actually raised it in the United Nations to say that we don't accept China's occupation of Tibet? And Aksai Chin is also one area which I think the Home Minister raised in the Parliament a few years back, saying that Aksai Chin hamara hai, humko wapas chahiye. So when we talk about these issues, let us talk post-Tibet. See, we were not in a position to contest the Chinese in terms of military terms at that point of time, and we saw that in 1962, actually what happened to the economy at that point of time.
Okay.
So these are the realities. So possibly the spirit of the Panchsheel Agreement was to create congeniality with China at that point of time, and after that, even I will give a reference to 1993 agreement on confidence building measures, 1996, 2013. There have been number of agreements with China to maintain tranquility on the border, and even to that extent that how much quantum of forces which are allowed on each side of the border, and China has never followed in principle or in practice any of these agreements, and we saw it in Galwan. So the point here is that Kargil was also one big blunder on our side at that point of time. So there are so many things we can discuss what happened in the past.
So
But I
India
am not
essentially was
a person-
uniquely exposed back then.
I am not a person who would like to go into the past. I want to talk about the present. What is our stand on Tibet today as far as the government of the day is concerned? Point number one.
Okay.
And point number two, CDS. See, CDS is a military general. This is my personal sort of view. That he should stick to raising strategic issues with China as on date. What are the problems in the border? What are the contention issues there? Why are we raising the Tibet issue, and why it is being raised is the larger question.
I mean, now that the CDS has made those comments, General Kochar, it has risked entering into the political forum.
And
When
it
a
has
serving
entered.
CDS reflects on political decisions made in the past, I mean, is that
Ravi-
institutional analysis? How do we go about that?
Okay, just give me 20 seconds.
Yeah.
As a military journal, I don't think he should get into the political domain at all. He should be totally into the strategic and the military domain. Let the politicians and the government actually handle these things. I don't think coming in the media and making statements about McMahon line and all, because military has no role to play here. We are there to defend the border. We want forces there, 17 corps. And I will actually raise this point here. In Northern Command, how many years it took to raise 17 corps? And the governments of the day
Okay.
never understood the threat from China. And today we are understanding this threat from China, and we are making such political statements, which I don't think, in my actually perspective, in my actually service in 27 years in the Indian Army, and my actually reading of this situation, I don't think is warranted.
All right, General. Many thanks for your opening submissions. Professor, many thanks for patiently waiting. Let me come to you. I'm going to ask you the same question. Was India uniquely exposed back then? I mean, a newly independent nation trying to understand, wriggle its own, situation. Does debating Panchsheel today meaningfully affect India's current position on the line of actual control? Is it largely symbolic, politicized? How do you read the CDS's comments, and where do we go on from here?
I think clearly at the moment these 5 principles of peaceful coexistence were enunciated in the April 1954 agreement, they were generally seen as sublime and broad principles that would guide not just India-China relations, but international relations in general. Let me make the first point to say that in hindsight, we are always very wise. We are always bolder and wiser in that sense. So first thing that we require to debate this point is not to look at it from 2026, when India is a nuclear weapon state. India is going to be third largest economy, largest middle class, booming, technologies and so on. We have to look at the argument in 1950s and ask the question, was there a clear understanding of a buffer? Was there India as one united nation? Was there one China united nation? We were still finding our feet as to who we are at that time. And the buffer that we are talking of, the British had only recognized de facto autonomy with certain amount of presence in terms of post and telegraph and trade agencies and so on, which India, of course, inherited. And India, of course, when India decided to give away those, free, concessions in terms of India's access there, maybe India should have sought hard bargain instead of implicit and indirect understanding that the border on this side will be seen as resolved now. So that understanding perhaps fell flat after the Chinese decided to move forward and claim those territories. And that did not happen because of Panchsheel Agreement. That happened primarily because the uprising that happened in Tibet, the fact that Dalai Lama decided to come to India, the fact that India allowed him to stay here, that is what militarized, quote unquote, this border, which was supposed to have easy access to each other. They had agreed on 6 passes from Shipkila to, sort of Niti, Kangdi, Kungdi, and the Dharma and Lipur Lake and so on. So the nature of reality of that time was very different. And even when we finally were pushed to the wall and we had to send Indian army to the high altitude warfare, they were going there in canvas shoes.
Yeah.
I mean, we are talking of an army of a very different era. We are talking of India of a very different era when we are still trying to consolidate Indian state. So I think, yes, one can in hindsight see that things could have done differently. But these ifs and buts of history are task of academics, I suppose. They will keep debating it over a period of time. And one can understand, go back, we'll find some things that could have been perhaps done differently. But, that was not the option. For example, India did what India thought at that time was good for it. And
you're absolutely right, Professor. I mean, Captain Retrospect, nobody knows better than Captain Retrospect. Do you? Look at this, Mr. Dahya. How the general said that the comparison between the two armies, we saw the same in 1962. Professor here telling us that we were still trying to find our feet and this was a unique predisposition. And your earlier comments, you said there was nothing that Nehru could have done. I'm trying to ask, what could have Nehru or that foreign policy done differently? And the answer is, well, too many things. But at that unique point in time when we just got our independence, trying to find our feet, what better could we have done? There are so many factors at play, not simple miscalculation, isn't it?
Kabirji, first of all, for me, this is not just about Nehruji. This is about the whole idea of India, like how India sees itself and how India sees its power in the global domain. As simple as that. This is not just about Nehruji or his foreign policy. I'm talking about the foreign policy consequent to Nehru's era as well. After that, the only time, that one time where, we take complete pride in our military might, that is 1971. What was 1971? India's military intervention in the Bangladesh issue, the creation of Bangladesh. And that's my point. And, I was very patiently listening to my senior and very respected Major General Rajan Kocharji. He said that the CDS should not make a political statement. See, with much respect to you, sir, this is not a political statement. This is about, history as well. We should learn from our historical mistakes. And this is not at all about belittling Nehruji. There are some mistakes that were made by our ancestors. There are some mistakes which have been made by our civilian leadership as well, and possibly at times could have been done by the military leadership as well. We need to learn from that. Kabir, my basic principle of seeing India in the global domain is simple. Either you can be an expansionist power or a shrinking power.
But you have to play to your own cards.
Or shrinking.
If we were as big as the United States, if we were in the Western Hemisphere, maybe we would have acted similarly, but we weren't and we aren't. So we had to take a different course.
See, Kabir,
I'm running out of time, Mr. Dahya.
Looking from that angle, the situation of China was much worse than India in 1947. But they had a civilizational clarity. They had a world view. That this is where China stands in the global order. What kind of worldview do we have of India? Where do we stand? Either we can be an expansionist power or a shrinking power. That's my point. And we need to realize it today. The situation has changed.
But your worldview can also be a proud worldview without being as expansionist as you sound at the moment, Mr. Dahya. I mean, with all due respect. General Kochar, your quick rebuttal.
Yeah, I just want to say that, you see, when Nehru took the decision, we don't know what all inputs he had at that point of time. We are not Nehru.
Yeah.
We cannot decide for him right now कि ये अच्छा किया ये बुरा किया, because जो भी किया वो उसके पास, you see at that point of time there were many inputs to the Prime Minister and his cabinet on which they've taken the decision. And last point I want to add is today we are talking of building up our armed forces in a very strong manner. Do we also suggest that in case we have only 1.99% of the GDP being allotted to the armed forces, we can make our armed forces stronger? What lessons have we learned then from Nehru's time? Because
that's a great
at
point.
that time we didn't have a strong army. Then why are we not allotting that kind of budget to the Indian army to make it capable to take on China? Because
but we have come a long way, General. We have come a long way. India's military is better positioned to manage China today than it was in the 1950s.
That is not enough. No, that is not enough. Let me tell you that. And I have just written an article in Times of India on the defense budget. I can tell you there are still large gaps which need to be addressed.
Okay.
And it should be addressed on priority. We don't have time at our disposal. Let me tell you, Kabir, we are not having that luxury of time to wait for the next attack to take place.
Okay, neither do I, and no pun intended at this point in time. Final 30 seconds to Professor. Professor, like General pointed out, what lessons from the 1950s are still relevant today?
I think we've already learned a lot of lessons from there, and the way India approaches China today is not the same as Nehru approached China. We are very assertive. You saw what happened post Galwan. We are standing eyeball to eyeball with China, and finally the thaw resulted after 4.5 years. So that means Nehru trusted China perhaps more than he should have.
Yeah.
But that's in hindsight that we can be wiser. Today we have learned lessons. We are already dealing with China with far more pragmatic manner. Border tensions are going on simultaneously as trade goes up 40% in the same year. That's a very smart, calibrated policy of sector-wise cooperation, sector-wise conflict.
So
I'm sure we have constantly been learning from what Nehru did.
That's one question that we were asking on the broadcast today, Professor, as well. That did we gift wrap Tibet and give it to China? And I think we did not gift wrap it. Those were some concessions that a new India was trying to find and understand, but we certainly did not gift wrap it. Completely run out of time here. Final 20 seconds to Wing Commander. Wing Commander, take it away.
See, I agree with you. It was very easy to judge leaders of 1950 from the comfort of today's military strength. Real leadership means understanding the limits faced then, not rewriting complex decisions as weakness decades later. That's what I'm saying. Today, our country's relation with all the neighbors have been deteriorating, and somebody wants to comment on the Nehru's foreign policy. It is so surprising that just you cannot handle one debate, you want to start another. So it is just to divert from the General Narawane's book, and therefore this topic is unnecessarily being
Many thanks. Many thanks, Wing Commander and General Kocher. Professor, always a pleasure to have you with us. Ms. Dhaya, many thanks for taking out the time. Tibet was once a buffer. Today, it's a border reality. We've been talking about it. Was Panchsheel a necessary diplomatic bet in a fragile post-independence world? Take a look at the 1950s. Or was it a strategic assumption that cost India dearly? These are all questions. History cannot be rewritten, but it can be re-examined. And the real question that we'll leave you with isn't just what Nehru did back in 1954. The real question is what India has learned since, and that's a bucket loads of wisdom. We're going to slip into a quick commercial breather here. On the other side, our second segment. Don't go anywhere.
रिश्तों को रंग दो, दुनिया को रंग दो.
Birla Opus Paints.
So John, the scene is...
Hands on the wheel.
It's like everything else fades away. It's you, the car, and the road. John, can we roll?
Let's go.
Roll camera, action! Cut! It's a wrap.
My team is waiting for me.
Where? What team?
Go ISIS. Indian Racing Festival, time to gear up India.
Sometimes it flows like water, light and free. Sometimes it stays grounded like the earth beneath. Sometimes it sparks romance. And sometimes it grows into an evergreen togetherness. Senko, Elements of Love.
Yes, we are in Philippines.
Many thanks for staying within your interest. Our second segment on IYI is important for all you viewers out there because we want you to remember that financial responsibility and loans, these are obligations, financial obligations. They are not surrender of one's dignity at large. Let us break this down for you. For years, thousands of Indian households have lived in a state of constant fear, not just of the debt that they owe, but of the people that are sent to collect that financial debt. We have all heard the horror stories, but now the tide seems to be turning. The Reserve Bank of India has stepped in with a definitive crackdown on loan recovery agents. Under the new proposal, banks will have to create a clear internal policy for loan recovery. They must penalize any agents who break the rules. Recovery agents will need to complete certified training and pass background checks before they can work. Banks must inform borrowers in writing before assigning an agent, and they will have to make the list of authorized agents public. Agents must follow a strict code of conduct. They cannot use threats, abuses, intimidation, or language that is coarse. Contact with borrowers will only be allowed between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. and all calls are going to be recorded. Harassment in any form is strictly prohibited, including public shaming or putting pressure through family members, employers, or neighbors. The changes are set to come into effect from the 1st of July this year. And for years, many borrowers have been facing such agents who often cross the line. They use abusive words and make direct threats to borrowers and their families. Borrowers get excessive calls, sometimes late at night or from hidden numbers. Relatives, employers, or even neighbors are contacted to shame the person and force repayment. Some agents threaten violence, pretend there is legal action, or say the police will get involved. There are also reports of unannounced visit to homes or workplaces which cause a lot of humiliation and fear. All this constant pressure leads to severe mental and emotional stress for many people. The big questions that we're trying to decode and educate the viewers: will these new rules really stop the harassment that so many borrowers face, or will agents find ways to continue their old tactics? With thousands of recovery agents operating across the country, how will the RBI and banks effectively monitor millions of daily interactions and recorded calls? With us on the broadcast, Mr. Ashok Nag, former advisor, RBI, and Ankit Gupta, advocate, Supreme Court, Consumer Affairs Specialist. Mr. Nag, let's get the snowball rolling here. Aggressive recovery practices. This is a symptom of a weak consumer protection now, isn't it? Or do you think this is a symptom of a credit system that expanded faster than it could build its own guardrails? For the average borrower out there that's watching the show right now, what really changes from the 1st of July? What new rights will actually look like on the ground? And do you think they are going to be enforceable? The agents will act right this time?
No, I don't think that it is impossible to implement what RBI is asking for. Okay. RBI is asking that there should be a kind of a policy should be there. Today, I don't think that in the bank, they don't have a particular kind of policy that must be followed by the agents who are basically following the borrowers to the loan. But what is important for us to the things, although RBI, whatever has been given by RBI in this circular or this is absolutely required, absolutely required. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah.
In fact, there is one thing which is required that, for example, in USA, there are certain acts like Student Loan Borrower Safety Net Act. Okay. So, student borrower loan with a different kind of a, approach should be taken for these things. Maybe advice should think about it, that whether they should get such kind of a loan specific act, specifically for students to be incorporated. Second thing is that RBI, if you have any kind of a complaint against the agents, okay, then you have to be first go to the bank's, whatever the grievances exception kind of things are there. But what is important there could be a consumer financial protection, a kind of a institutions RBI can think of, because ombudsman, which is there, if you have a complaint to the, it will be ombudsman to do. But it is more important that they should have a separate kind of a institutions where it will be consumer financial protection kind of thing. That is one thing. Second thing is that there are certain issues are there in the borrowing modalities, okay, particularly for the retail borrowers, okay. And that is important that some banks, I do not know all other, there could be a kind of incentive that if you are able to bring a loan borrower with a higher interest rate than the other thing, then you get more compensation.
Yeah.
So thus kind of a compensatory kind of things must be not allowed by RBI.
Yeah, so basically accountability gets diluted by design, isn't it, Mr. Nag?
Yeah.
Many borrowers don't even know that harassment is illegal. They don't even know that getting a call late at night, abusive language, is actually illegal. If a recovery agent calls at midnight, abuses them or threatens social media exposure, what should one immediately do, Mr. Gupta? You'll have to unmute yourself, sir. Oh, you're with us. Please go ahead.
So basically, see, already the law is in place. Already criminal procedures are there. Now, after these guidelines, some tightening or some loosening will be done, because otherwise also all these banks, NBFCs were obliged to comply with the RBI directions regarding recovery. The recovery agents were to be registered, and only the registered recovery agent were to take calls for on behalf of the institutions for recovery. Now, as a consumer, a consumer can always, the first and foremost things which comes to a mind of a consumer who receives these kind of calls is to make a police complaint. Now, police says to contact the bank. The bank says that we have a grievance redressal mechanism. You can always complain in there. Thereafter, there is RBI ombudsman. Then at times you can always go to civil courts for filing damages suit. But again, these all procedures are cumbersome procedures which a layman does not understand. Now, the major problem is that the more or less the person who has defaulted in loan will get these kind of calls. And because he has defaulted in loan, a large number of segment is a segment which do not know their right. And this is how I think is the RBI initiative to popularize these kind of schemes day in and day out, so that the consumer knows his rights. So if the consumer is unaware, if you receive a threatening call, he does not know what to do.
So we are heading in the right direction. We understand that, advocate. We are heading in the right direction. But what does the playground right now look like? You're saying borrowers and these defaulters, they're ill aware about their own rights. But will this now certainly help? Because we've seen 2007, the Supreme Court said something like that as well. We've had these warnings from the top court earlier as well. Why did implementation fail for so long then?
So basically, see, ultimately the implementation on papers is correct. The RBI gets the data which is correct. But actually on the practical field, if you see, the agencies, the banks, the NBFCs, the cooperative banks, they usually hire people who are unauthorized, and they still are making these kind of threatening calls. And this is the way how they get a recovery. Because if they go by the legal channel, they will not be able to get a recovery. If, for say, the draft, this notification by the RBI which says that the bank has to inform the customer about who is the agency who is going to talk. This is something which is impractical and impossible. In today's scenario, will that
you say impractical and impossible. Let me bring in Mr. Nag. Mr. Nag, you see, I know the bank also has to, do its own job. The bank says recovery is necessary to protect the depositor's money, I also need to take back that money. But where do you draw that line? And, you know, whilst we're talking about this playground, under these new rules, these banks must record calls. There have to be restrictive contact hours and pause recovery if a grievance is filed. That's what I'm reading here. So these agents, they have to be on a public domain roster. That list has to be made public. But are banks operationally ready for something like this? How soon after the 1st of July will we see it actually working on the ground?
See, this is a kind of a problems that it is not so easy to resolve. Okay, what examples? If you have a recovery agents, what is the remunerations they'll get if there is a certain kind of recovery must be there.
Yeah.
So their incentive is to that somehow I should get the recovery, whatever kind of a approach I take it. Okay. So problem is this, that these kind of a banks have to be more kind of a sure that they have their due diligence for the borrowers who are there borrowing for money from you. What is their kind of a their ability to actually make the such payment? Have you done this kind of exercise? So point is that any recovery agents they cannot get paid properly unless they make the recovery. It is obvious the bank will not pay if you do not do any recovery or you're done. They may give you some kind of a cost of the travel or something. And obviously nobody is going to spend 2 or 5, 4 or 3 hours to get the recovery. Nothing to be that cannot make any recovery from the agent. So there is whatever RBI has said, it is absolutely no doubt about that.
So this new draft, Mr. Nag, will it change how the agents are paid? Because it seems like that abusive nature was being incentivized by the model earlier.
By that, banks will have to make more payment. Okay, if this kind of things are there, because then what will happen? A recovery agent, the recovery pattern will go down. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's possible. Now that kind of thing. That another is that no recovery agent will try to accept a recovery borrower where it is a very low amount, say 1 lakh or anything like that, because it is more difficult for them to exit. So its impact on the loan disbursement by thing is something has to be deep.
This all seems to be a very delicate balancing act, Mr. Nag. It seems like
policy is bad.
Yeah, no, the policy looks great. The policy looks great. The draft rules look great on paper. Let me tell you that. No more abusives. You'll have to be on a roster. The list will be made public. You'll know who's calling you. No calling after 8 p.m. Not many of that SMS bombing that happens. But you see, advocate, India has rapidly digitized its lending. We've got applications now. We've got microcredit. So on the regulation and legality front, has the regulation kept pace with how easy we're able to lend the money?
It is extremely on the higher side of how typically and traditionally it was done. Today, at a click of mouse and by downloading of just an application, the lending has been processed, and so is the default increase. So basically, there has been high quantity of disbursal of loans, documentations, biometric systems, uploading of documents, everything has been digitalized, and so is the quantity of defaults increased. And because of that, the need of recovery agents and recoveries and legal recoveries. Today, you see that the courts are flooded with these kind of 138 litigations. The the DRT courts are flooded with SARFAESI acts. The NCLTs, all kinds.
So it seems like we're heading in the right direction. But this is a delicate balancing act that has to be done by the bank now. But you're telling us that many cases in the court, which tells us that awareness is also increasing. So these are all good signs per se. Many thanks to both of you, Mr. Nag and Advocate, for joining us and helping us out on this particular front. A loan, remember, viewers, is a contract. It's not a weapon. Recovery is legal. Harassment is not. And with these new rules, the RBI is sending a clear message. Financial discipline cannot come at the cost of human dignity. The real test is now whether it's going to actually work on the ground or not. With that, completely run out of time. That's all the time we have for you in Your Interest. We'll see you again next week.
This isn't a trail of peace. This is pressure overload. hill built for 1,000, forced to carry lakhs.
Instead of lightening the footprint, you have allowed people to actually get into every nook and corner of the Himalayas.
Careless travel, choking hills. If we don't change now, there won't be much left to enjoy.
We need to follow the Bhutan model, regulate people who can access hills.
News9 presents Heal the Hills, continuous coverage.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Global Lens. Our top story at this hour: amid the rising tensions with Iran, the US is now sending a second aircraft carrier to West Asia. The aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford and its escort ships will be sent to West Asian regions from the Caribbean, according to US officials. This comes days after President Donald Trump suggested another round of talks and conversations with Iran going forward. Earlier this week, remember, Trump had said he was considering sending a second aircraft carrier if a deal is not reached with Iran. The second round of talks between United States and Iran failed to yield any result. Negotiations did not materialize as one of Iran's top security officials visited Oman and Qatar this week and exchanged messages with US intermediaries. First aircraft carrier, which is the USS Abraham Lincoln, and several guided missile destroyers arrived in West Asia in the month of January. And Trump says the US has to make a deal with Iran and that it could happen over the next month. Trump further said that after talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, they reached no definitive agreement on how to move forward with Iran, but he insisted that negotiations with Tehran would continue to see if a deal can be achieved in the near future. In fact, Trump has threatened strikes on Iran if no agreement is reached, while Tehran has vowed to retaliate, stoking fears of a wider war as US amasses forces in the Middle East. He has repeatedly voiced support for a secure Israel alongside a US ally. Remember, it's a long-standing US ally and an arch foe of Iran. Iran has said it is prepared to discuss curbs on its nuclear program in exchange for lifting sanctions, but has ruled out linking the issue to missiles.
We have to make a deal, otherwise it's going to be very traumatic. Very traumatic. I don't want that to happen, but we have to make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time, and they got Midnight Hammer instead. And this will be very traumatic for Iran if they don't make a deal. Look, if they don't make a deal, then it'll be a different story. But we had a very good meeting yesterday with Bibi Netanyahu, and he understands, but it's ultimately up to me. If the deal isn't a very fair deal and a very good deal with Iran, then it's going to be, I think, a very difficult time for them in the back. I guess over the next month, something like that. Yeah, it shouldn't take, I mean, it should happen quickly. They should agree very quickly.
And just weeks after a dramatic purge of China's top general, the CIA is moving to capitalize on any resulting discord with a new public video targeting potential informants in the Chinese military. The US spy agency on Thursday rolled out the video depicting a disillusioned mid-level Chinese military officer in the latest step in a campaign to ramp up human intelligence gathering on Washington's strategic rival. It follows a similar effort last May that focused on fictional figures within China's ruling Communist Party that provided detailed Chinese language instructions on how to securely contact US intelligence. CIA Director John Ratcliffe said in a statement that the agency videos, in fact, had reached many Chinese citizens and that it would continue offering Chinese government officials an opportunity to work toward a brighter future together. Last month, China's Defence Ministry announced that Shang Hushia's second-in-command under Xi as Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission was under investigation. This is the highest profile removal of a senior Chinese military leader in decades. The short CIA videos posted on its YouTube channel appeared aimed at exploiting domestic political fallout from Beijing's years-long crackdown on military corruption that hit the upper echelons of the People's Liberation Party. The CIA said it is confident that the online campaign is penetrating China's Great Firewall, internet restrictions and reaching the intended audience. The CIA has been investing heavily into countering China and has tried to rebuild its spy network in the country after Beijing crippled its reach by killing or imprisoning numerous US sources between 2010 to 2012. The high-stakes spy game is a part of an escalating military and